community organizer, like in my daytime life, and so when facilitating, we're always doing icebreakers and trying to make the space a little bit more friendly. And I really appreciate that as a presidential candidate, which kind of has a high status, that you are comfortable breaking out of that and being human and thinking about those things, whether you watch the Disney movies or not. I'm going to see Lion King this weekend, so I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited. Yeah. Thank you so much. Hello. I'm well. Welcome.
Oh, goodness. Hi, everybody.
I think that if you're on this end, that would be okay. We are live streaming. Okay, that's fine. We'll do it this way. You're welcome. All right, welcome and thank you for being here. We appreciate your time. We kind of jumped in, but why don't we give you a few minutes just to introduce yourself and let us know where you're coming from, and if you wouldn't mind, your favorite Disney movie as an icebreaker. I came with that one on my own.
Okay. Well, I'm a great aunt, so I know every Disney movie since 1972. My name's Ayape Sudanam Kinamu Christian Moyawasife Curry. I'm seeking the Green Party nomination as president for real good reasons. One is that I'm a farmer. I'm a fourth generation black farmer, so I care about the soil and I know about it. Secondly, our nation is browning. So we need to have brown people represent our party, because if we're a political party, who's gonna vote for us? Brown people. So we have to have effective representation at the national, the state, and the local level. Our campaign has spent February, March, April, May, and June pulling together what's called the Green Positioning System. Anyone who wins the nomination can take these 24 points and grow our party. Is that okay? I don't want to
Absolutely.
take over my time, but I appreciate it.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. All right, so we'll jump back in. So the first question that we are starting with is strategies. What strategies do you plan to implement to address gentrification and the growing homeless population? Is it all right if we start here with you? All right, we're gonna go 2 minutes each candidate. Do I have someone who's keeping time? No?
My cell phone doesn't have a second hand.
Okay,
But-
I will, I'll round about it, all right? Here we go.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, I've got a stop line.
Okay, thank you so much.
It's really important that we take a step back before we tackle that question, because there's no one thing that talks about one thing. When you ask about gentrification and homelessness, our nation was founded taking away people's home, Native Americans. Also, they took us, black folk, from our home. So homelessness shouldn't be the word used, because there's the 1% and then the rest of us. So no one I know is 6 months free from debt if they lose their job. So I'd like to challenge us to come up with a different word than homelessness. You know, I think folks aren't comfortable with the 1 and the 99, but gentrification is a wrong word too. So I'm not comfortable with both those words. We have European DNA Americans who now find it good to move closer instead of living in the suburbs. I'm from Los Angeles and from South Central Los Angeles. And now we have dogs walking, people walking, and it's really upsetting a lot of folks, but we share this land. So we have to figure out how to have a more perfect union, and those are the difficult conversations that our campaign has talked about having. America at 300. So the 2 words, they need to be redefined and discussed. So unless we start with the land we're on that didn't belong to the Europeans that came here, and us who have built this nation, black folk, and dealing with reparation. So that's the only way right now I can answer it. But as a Green, as I said earlier, it's really important that we brown our party. So by the end of this decade, it will be a brown one. So I think the question has to be a little bit more complicated, but those two, I think I've done my 2 minutes.
Great, thank you.
Awesome.
Well, I think we need two basic approaches. First is we need rent control because the rent is too damn high. That's why people are being pushed out of their homes and into homelessness. We had federal rent control during World War II because we weren't producing houses, we were producing weapons. And the rent was getting too damn high, so they had rent control. The rent is too damn high now. So that's the immediate program, but you put that on, you want to have private development. That means we got to recommit to public housing, except do it the right way this time. The way it was done after World War II increased segregation and increased displacement from, good neighborhoods and put poor people, mostly black people, in projects. And if there were white poor people in projects, they were in other projects that were segregated. So a new public housing program can be a program with mixed incomes like they do in Europe. So it's a desegregation program. It can be a clean energy program with carbon negative building. It can be a jobs program, of course, as well as an affordable housing program. It should be part of an economic bill of rights so everybody has a right to decent housing. 1963, March on Washington for jobs and freedom. The Poor People's Campaign, 1968, and the Freedom Budget in between in 1966. They all called for 500,000 new units of affordable housing a year. Now it's probably double that because we're a bigger population and the need is bigger. In Europe, 30 to 60% of housing in a lot of cities is what they call social housing, which is public housing. And they don't have homelessness. And the rent isn't too damn high for those people. That's the way we gotta go if we're gonna deal with the housing crisis, which means we can't depend on private housing development. The federal government has helped developers develop so-called affordable housing. Started a little bit under Johnson, it was a flood under Nixon. By the time we got to Clinton through Trump, they're destroying public housing. We gotta turn that completely around. And I think that's the approach, rent control and public housing.
Thank you. Public housing was mentioned, and I have to note that as somebody who has lived in publicly subsidized housing, as somebody who comes from the PJs in the North, not all public housing options are the same. They can also be segregationist and oppressive. So rent control, absolutely. We do need rent control. We, as a Green Party, we advocate for guaranteed housing, for guaranteed utilities, food, the basic essentials of life. This is a part of our socialist approach. And as a campaign, we advocate for a universal basic income. And that will address these issues in part. But we have to deal with the systemic racism, the systemic classism in our society. We have to deal with the fact that when we're talking about homelessness, we're talking about people who are socially and economically disenfranchised. We have to deal with the predatory landlords that are pushing people out of the housing market, and we must attack this issue of gentrification, because what gentrification does is it takes communities that are in need of healing and it pushes people out of their homes. All of the instrumentalities of it, from public domain takings to this corporatist preying upon communities that takes away voice and choice from the communities themselves. We must move from gentrification to revitalization. We have to empower communities to build up their own communities, their own homes, and give them the tools so that they have comfortable communities that they can raise the next generation in. This is how we're going to combat homelessness, how we're going to combat disenfranchisement of people in this country, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the mental health issues that contribute also to homelessness. If we had a robust healthcare system, which this Green Party supports, a national healthcare system that is free from corporate interests, then we can also deal with some of the ills that are unfortunately forcing people further into the margins of our society.
I have a question. Do we ask each other questions? Can we comment? Or, because I missed the first part of this.
We're just gonna be asking a few questions. We're gonna open it up to a few questions from the audience. And so I think we were just gonna keep it in that
I thought
format.
it was a debate, because there's points that I'm taking from me personally that maybe I don't agree with, so I want to address those.
Okay, Trey, what do you think? I think that it's flexible enough to where we can
Okay.
do something like that. Why don't we go ahead and
No,
go
one to
round
finish.
through again, and we can come back around one time? Does that sound okay with all the other candidates?
I don't mind.
Yes? Okay,
Can I go ahead and answer?
please go ahead.
Okay, so, that's all right. So, first I want to say that again, like, we're not, this isn't a real presidential election. They're not gonna select one of us to be the president, so I don't know, even if one of us got in there and was the president, what we would be able to do about housing. I think it's like a better question for you, for somebody running for city council. If we had Green Party people in city councils everywhere, they could do a lot about getting housing for people. So, but I will answer the question. Housing is a basic economic human right. Everybody deserves to have a place to live, and that's really important. It's a really important human right. I mean, I'm not against rent control, but I think we need to move away from having real estate, like speculators owning property and like especially from out of town, but even a rich person in town owning a lot of property and renting it to people to try to make money. And we need more publicly owned housing and help people be able to own their own houses or apartments, and help communities be able to like grouply own property together and have housing for everyone. And I think reparations ties into this. There are communities like the Rhonda neighborhood in every city, like where Black people were moved out of their neighborhoods and something was built there or whatever, and we need reparations to those people in those communities, and like you give them back the land that they were living on and give them money to build their communities and housing for themselves there. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing up about, my role as a city council member. Rent control is something that I absolutely talk about. So organizing around housing, I'm an anti-displacement organizer, so snapping fingers to all of that. So just based upon the request, and I really like the idea of being flexible and moving as things come around. So instead of just going through and asking these questions, since we want to have more of a debate factor, why don't I go ahead and read off some of the things that we had here. We'll go through, we'll give you the 2 minutes, all right? You can include any of these things and however, and then we'll come through a round and do another round in 2 minutes. Does that sound okay? You guys will come comfortable with that? Thank you. Okay, so we have questions about reparations that came up. Do you support reparations? Where will that money come from, particularly for Black Americans and people otherwise identified who are descendants of enslaved Africans? Tell us about your stance on environmental justice. And if you were president, how would you approach the escalating tensions with other countries such as Iran, North Korea, Russia, and Venezuela? Okay? All right, we're gonna start down at this end. All right? We're gonna do 2 minutes for each person, and then we'll take a second, and then we'll come back through a round, and then any of you can readdress any point that any other person has made. Sound okay? All right.
You want me to cover all of this?
Yes, let's start, I guess, from the point about reparations, right? So we were talking about gentrification and the increasing homeless population. You did mention reparations. Why don't you start a roll off from there? Who? Appreciate you.
Okay, well, I'm a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and I'm all about reparations. I'm also a supporter of the Black is Back Coalition, which has a 19-point Black political agenda for self-determination, which is all about reparations too. And I think we need to turn over all the resources of this country to the African and indigenous people, because our whole country and capitalism itself was built on European imperialism in Africa and Asia and this continent, and everything we have was built on plunder and slavery and Western white nationalist imperialist capitalism that runs the United States is destroying the world, and the world is going to be destroyed. We're not going to be able to live anymore, and the system we have can't be in charge. We need to put oppressed people, Africans and indigenous people, we need to give them the resources and the power so that they can come up with a solution to save the world. It's the only hope for our white people as well as for everybody. So that's my position.
Thank you.
So under the premise that we're going to start with reparations, I will start there and I'll connect it to the issues happening across the world. So I want to tell you a little story. It's the story of America, folks, a country that was built on the backs of the abuses against my people, African American people, abuses against Native people in this country. And people were brought here in bondage for a reason. For what? To make profit off of their misery. Reparations is an issue of fundamental justice. It seeks to make us whole. It is not a giveaway. It is not a freebie. We have built this country, and it is not just cutting a check, because that is not how you will seek to make this situation whole. You have to invest in the upliftment of a people for the upliftment of a nation as a whole. And that means investing in education, investing in HBCUs. It means giving back property stolen from black folk by violence. It means a lot of things. It will take a lot to bring justice to this issue. Now, I mentioned I was going to tell you the story of America as a whole and connect this to other issues. We, as a country, this country has abused people for capitalist profit. And we see this taking place in the way we relate to other countries and the way that we, as a country, unfortunately, wage war for profit across the world. We are amping up tensions with Iran as we speak. We have been amping up tensions and destabilizing Venezuela as we speak. And for what? So that we can dig into those countries as we've done to other countries, as this country has done to other people, and profit off of the ultimate misery that will occur to their civilian populations. It must end. The colonialism must end here in the United States of America against our own people, and it must end against peoples across the world. We have to stop the warmongering and invest in human infrastructure and invest in the rights of human beings.
On reparations, we need to get behind H.R. 40, the bill that Conyers wrote and now carried by Sheila Jackson Lee, to set up a commission to study how best to do reparations for the descendants of slaves. And we need that because we need to do it right. I think it will in the end involve both collective and individual reparations. In other words, building institutions of empowerment in black community and also cutting checks to people so that, you know, the wealth of black people is like 5% of that of white people. So there's that reparation to be made. I think while it's being studied, remember Dr. King called for a promissory note to be paid when he gave the I Have a Dream speech, but before he got to the dream, which was ad-lib, he talked about the promissory note at the March on Washington in 1963. And he said it came back to us insufficient funds. Now the government needs to pay that promissory note. To me, that's the economic Bill of Rights we've been talking about. And how you pay for it, you tax the rich. They're the ones that accumulated the capital based on all this exploitation of all kinds of people. Environmental justice, we need a civilian conservation corps and a just transition program, which we used to call Superfund for Workers, so that everybody displaced by the transition to peace conversion and ecological conversion has their wages and benefits maintained. And then we go into the communities, particularly the communities of color, where the poisons and the wastes have been dumped, and start cleaning them up. And finally, on how do we deal with the question basically was imperialism. Imperialism comes out of capitalism. Capital exports, invests overseas, draws profits back, and extracts surplus from the global south to the global north. And that's a process we gotta stop. It involves a global military empire of over 800 military bases that we need to start withdrawing from. I'm calling for cuts in military spending of 75%. To start, withdraw from the military bases, and let's be the world's humanitarian superpower instead of its military superpower. Make friends instead of enemies.
Here, here. Let's go backwards. We gotta take a step back to the doctrine of discovery. This started with the European monarchs agreeing not to fight each other to take over our planet. That's the root of capitalism, based on rich folks, monarchs, going around taking over people's property. So unless we get Europe involved, the Native Americans have sued them. So the U.S. participated in the second conference to draw up Africa, and then they came here with that same doctrine of discovery to take over Native Americans. So I think we have to have a fundamental base of understanding about how we got here through capitalism. We need a system change, not a green deal, not a blue deal, a change. The 1% they take over the means of production. So unless we have a system change in our nation, these are just reforms folks are talking about. Reparation, serious. Cut a check and invest. How many folks have already received reparation for enslaved? Because I heard slave. No, we were enslaved Africans. So let's get that straight. And then there's no such thing as white people. You're from Europe. There's 15 tribes. I'm from somewhere. So we have to correct ourselves when we talk about each other. Because when we do the history, then this stuff does not come. Or the her story, these mislabels has to stop. So one, it's enslaved. Two, you're European. That means 30 seconds? Oh, okay. So to pay for this, we have enough money. We have enough land. We have enough everything. It just takes political will to do it. I don't want to go over my time.
Sorry, I didn't mean to-
No, that's okay. I just didn't know. No problem. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
okay.
Okay, thank you all. So let's just take a second, digest, right? So we're gonna go back around so that we can readdress the candidates' debate style, all right? Is there anybody who wants to jump off and go first? Okay, I see this hand first, and then we'll pass along, and then we'll come back this way. Sound okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I gave you part one, the story of America. And now I'm going to give you part two of how we changed that tale and how we changed that story. So the question was asked, how do we pay for it all? And I love this question. It comes up every time we talk about dealing with the rights of human beings as opposed to creating profit corporations. They always want to know, how are you going to pay for it? They're never raising that question when it comes to the next war. We are going to pay for it by reorienting our financial priorities, including moving away from a war budget to a defense budget, because a true defense is a well-educated citizenry. We're going to invest in human infrastructure by reorienting our priorities. We are going to slash that war budget by at least half. And we're going to minimize our activities abroad and our interventionism, but we are also going to reshape our economic system, because unlike many of these Democratic candidates what they don't seem to get is you cannot layer socialist reforms on top of a capitalist, abusive system. You must fundamentally change the system. And this includes democratizing our money supply. Because as it stands right now, banks have way too much power. We are going to democratize the creation of money, and we are going to use that power to invest in human infrastructure. This is a part of the Green Platform. We call it greening the dollar. And it's a very important part of how we're going to pay for this. But ultimately, what we're going to do is create a societal and a social shift in understanding where we focus on the things that really matter. The upliftment of society, the education of all, clean air, water, and soil, and a country where we can all live and share together the prosperity, rather than people engaging in predation against America's citizens. I felt this firsthand. As someone who comes from many minority communities, I am unapologetically black, I am openly gay, and the communities that I represent are tired of the oppression at the hands of people who have profited off of our suffering. Let's work together for once to build a system we can all share in. We've got the means, and we need to take control of it.
Okay, well, first I want to talk about this idea of having a reduction in the military budget. Like, there's the U.S. military serves no useful purpose. Everything that it does is destruction. And we buy all these weapons. We spend billions and hundreds of billions of dollars on these weapons of destruction, and it needs to stop completely. We need to totally eliminate the U.S. military and totally eliminate the U.S. weapons industry. There's 25% of the U.S. military is still going to destroy the world. We don't have time for that. Like, if it's not us, somebody's going to have to get rid of the U.S. military, or the world is going to be destroyed. So that's the first thing. And then I have to address some things Howie said, like, that is how U.S. imperialism works, that we go into other countries and steal steal everything from those countries. And the reason that the United States goes to war against countries is because they have progressive governments there that use the resources of those countries for the people there instead of allowing U.S. corporations to steal them. And Howie has sponsored forums supporting the regime change campaign against the Syrian government, which has a progressive anti-imperialist government, and he talks about other anti-imperialist countries in this way, like going along with the propaganda and saying we should overthrow their governments. And then he says the U.S. should be a humanitarian superpower. Humanitarian is the pretext that the United States has used to go to war against some countries. That was the pretext for the war against Yugoslavia. They accused the Yugoslavian government of committing genocide. They accused Gaddafi in Libya of killing his own people, and we just can't be a humanitarian superpower. We need to let other countries have self-determination and do what they want.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pass it down to Howard.
We got to get socialist internationalism right. We don't stand with states. We stand with working people and oppressed people. To apologize for a brutal dictator like Assad, to call him progressive when he implemented structural adjustment under the direction of the IMF and the World Bank, while he was torturing prisoners renditioned by the CIA and sent to him for torture in the early 2000s. That's Assad. Now, people rose up for their democratic rights and their economic rights, and we should be in sympathy and solidarity with them. That doesn't mean the U.S. military should go in. The U.S. military was opposed to that democratic revolution as well. The situation in Syria was two counter-revolutions against the People's Revolution, and it's a jihadi reaction and Assad's reaction. So we got to get smarter. And actually, right now, Israel, Russia, and the United States are combining to push Iran out, which helped Assad maintain his regime. You can find a lot of that in the Israeli and the Arab press right now. So we got to get a lot smarter than just this simplistic thing. Anti-imperialist states that are oppressive to their own people. That's not how we build a socialist world that ends imperialism. We got to do class politics, not geopolitics like we're Henry Kissinger. So I make no apologies. The guy he mentioned, Anand Gopal, has written a great book on what happened in Afghanistan, how he embedded himself in the Taliban and basically told a lot of stories of how they were playing off the Americans who had no idea who they were dealing with. We should have got the hell out of Afghanistan because we didn't know what the hell we were doing. And they played us. And he's done the same thing in Syria and documented the democratic revolution lives on. We just had a revolution in Sudan, right? They threw out Bashir. You know what they were marching in the streets with a Syrian revolutionary flag saying, our Bashir's gone, your Bashir's next. The Arab Spring continues. People want their rights and they want economic justice. And we should not apologize for oppressive people. And again, the U.S. should not play any role militarily in picking winners and losers in this country. It's up to the people in those countries.
Thank you. I'm so glad, Howie, that you brought up both Israel and Russia, areas that are areas of interest for me as someone who's an activist for Palestinian rights and has personally paid a price for that, losing my position as a rabbi in Youngstown, but also as someone who's been watching this Russiagate nonsense and a parade of that with great dismay in this country. It's a mass distraction from the abuses our country's engaging in against its own people and other peoples across the world. You said we got to be smarter than this simplistic thinking. I agree 100%, which is why I was so dismayed that I saw you on video buying into the Russiagate nonsense and criticizing, in effect, Jill Stein for participating in the RT debate that Suriname also participated in the last presidential election. The only real opportunity for a televised live debate, which added immensely to the democratic choice for the American public, the ability to see that. I was disappointed that you criticized that. I was disappointed that you bought into the Russiagate narrative by doing that. I was also disappointed to hear you knock people like Julian Assange, people who bring to light the information that allows us to lift the veil on what our country is doing here and abroad to other peoples. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how upset I was based on my activism in the LGBTQIA community as an openly gay man, but also as someone who was a chair of the local Pride Center at one point in Youngstown and had to field all of these calls from, we mentioned homelessness, people who were kicked out of their homes for being transgender. I was so sad to hear you not only refer to Chelsea Manning as Bradley Manning, but after being corrected saying whatever he calls himself. This is not the Green Party in 2019 or 2020. We have to be smarter. We have to be more open to thinking out of the box when it comes to diversions like Russiagate. We have to be more inclusive and up to date on how we bring people under this big tent umbrella that our party should be, because we are really a joint effort for everyone, for everyone's advancement. And I'm surprised to hear you telling other people they need to be smarter when you've bought into that very basic and very lie-filled perspective on Russiagate, that mass distraction game.
I'm like, I'm being nice to people.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple of things. Talk is cheap. Actions speak louder than words. Look at us up here, right? Only one person here has been allowed to participate in several state events under the guise of the fake white privilege. If we want to be real and smart, Howie, how come you just allow people to allow you to present and you have all these other candidates? Being smart means being united. Everybody, I don't even know where the other candidates are. I thought they were going to be live streaming in. We don't have 5% yet. So how we get 5% is have a diverse group of candidates moving forward. All of us have different target groups. We can get our 5%, we can get our 15%, but being smart means being honest. There's been 2 joint statements put out by everybody but my brother, because we've been excluded. Where's the reparations in our party? Our campaign is saying, listen, let's end white privilege. How many folks have heard of the White Privilege Conference that's been going on for about 2 decades? Have y'all heard about the White Privilege Conference? Well, there's a conference that deals with white privilege. Our party, we're challenging our party to take up and end white privilege. Greens, we bad. When we're able to accept the intrinsic biases that we all have, deal with them, how we've made green important, we can make understanding about the doctrine of discovery, about our real understanding about who we are as human beings over our labels. So I think it's really important that we have honest conversations.
How would you?
Well, I wrote an article called Russiagate is a Mass Distraction. People are getting all wrapped up on one conspiracy theory or another. You know, was the emails leaked or hacked? And some people will live or die by which side. And I ask everybody who tells me that, well, what download speed will it take to it to be a hack? Because that's what they're debating on. And the veterans, intelligence professionals for sanity are divided on that question, as are computer experts. And I don't know the answer to that. And I ain't gonna get distracted because the climate is collapsing, inequality is killing us, and we got a nuclear arms race that puts us in existential threat as well. I did not criticize Jill Stein for participating in the RT debate. I did say that I think RT, Sputnik took that picture. You know, Putin sat down for just a minute, they snapped a picture, and Sputnik puts it out there, which our cable media has been broadcasting ever since. I think that was a setup. That's what I said, and I still think it was. Julian Assange, I defended him in the interview you're talking about against the hack accusation. Since then, he's had 17 counts under the Espionage Act. And this all goes back to 2010. It had nothing to do with the 2016 election. But I did criticize him for giving advice to Donald Trump Jr., including contest the election, say it was rigged if you lose. I mean, we got armed militia out here. They just shut down the Oregon legislature. We've had people killed, synagogues attacked, mosques attacked, churches burned. You know, Trump has just put a target on, I think she's a congresswoman in this district, Ilhan Omar. You know, this is dangerous stuff, and for science to do that, I criticize that. That doesn't mean I won't defend and oppose the U.S. using the Espionage Act to you know, it's an attack on the whole press. And I'd like to respond to some of the other statements.
No,
about-
stop.
We'll come back around then. We're gonna stick to the 2-minute rule. Bob, I'd like to invite you in. Is there anything that you would like to add? Good? All right.
Okay, so. You've addressed that, and that article that you wrote, Russia's a mass distraction, was after a lot of Greens were very upset about your Russiagate statements, and you had to dial it back. But we're gonna talk about the issues that matter, as you brought up, the issues such as taxing the rich. I'm gonna go back to that, because that was your answer in terms of how we're gonna pay for it. That was an answer that really could fit well in the field of 20, 30, 100 Democratic candidates that are out there right now. Just tax the rich. Take a little slice off of what they're making. It's gonna make everything okay, right? They'll still be able to earn billions and billions of dollars off your suffering, right? That's not the direction that we need to go. We need to really genuinely reshape this system and build a truly socialist paradigm, okay? So that's the direction that we're headed. The direction we're headed is blowing past those mass distractions, honoring all the many diverse communities that exist, and you didn't address that dead naming and misgendering that you did when it came to Chelsea Manning. Studies show that when you refer to transgender people by their gender, studies show that decreases the suicide rate amongst transgender youth. So it is an issue of life and death. You didn't address it, okay? We really have to, as a party, move forward. We have to tackle the issue of war, and we have to do so in a principled stance that respects all the many peoples across this world and understands that we're all in this struggle together against what? Privilege. The end of privilege is the goal of my campaign, and it should be your goal too. It should be the goal of the Green Party. And when you come from the perspective of privilege, it is hard to disabuse yourself of the notion that maybe you need to update your thinking. Maybe you need to incorporate how people want to be called, how they want to be referred to, how they want to be included. Maybe you need to open up your long-held perspectives on privilege and think of a new paradigm. This party has got to move to a new generation of thinking. It has got to. And that's what my campaign is offering. It is offering a new generation of thinking. It is offering a generation of thinking that will bring an end to privilege, including capitalist socioeconomic privilege, and that is the only thing that is going to genuinely save this society and change it for the better.
No more Russian derailment disorder. It's called RDD. Done. Enough. I think it's critically important that we talk about, as Greens, how we work together and how we shape our nation. How have many people been Greens more than 5 years here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So you all know some of the challenges we face as Greens. You all know it. We don't have a critical mass of people yet. Because once you have so many people, some of the kind of bumps in the road that we keep hitting won't happen. So I'd like to challenge us as Greens to have these honest conversations about what's going on. Brother did not deal with that we've been excluded. Have you all seen the 2 joint statements that the candidates accept how we release?
Yes.
Who's seen it? I can't, it's a little dark. So, these are 6 adults saying we've been excluded. Not to deal with that is not okay. We are not a competition. We don't have 5%. What we have to do is have a unified understanding and move ourselves forward. This has to change. So I'm challenging you all to challenge my brother, that if you get a spot somewhere, we all should get a spot. Is that fair or not? Oh, come on, Greens. Yeah, we can't pretend that that's okay. We can't have bogus titles like presumptive nominee. Thank you. I can't tell if it stopped. You know what? I can't see if it stopped. When you hold it up, I just stop.
30
Okay,
rating.
now I'm seeing it. Yeah, that's okay.
The first one is 30, the second one is 5.
Okay, thank you, because I'm like, I can't tell what's really going on.
I'd like to open it up to David.
Okay, well, first I want to get back to Syria. The Syrian government is a progressive government. It's led by the Ba'ath Party, which is a socialist party. They had free education up to university, free healthcare, a lot of social programs that are better than any other country around there. The government looks out for the balances, the interests of like many different sectors of the population of Alawites and Christians, several different denominations of Christians and Armenians and Druze, and it's a diverse country, and there's no leftist revolution against Syria. The only armed opposition against the Syrian government are fundamental Wahhabi fundamentalists who want to execute everybody who doesn't adhere to their narrow views. It's not even really Muslim, because most Sunni Muslims support the Syrian government, and so Syria has been under attack by Al Qaeda, and the USA and the Zionist regime created Al Qaeda, and that's why in the early 2000s the Syria was under attack by Al Qaeda already, and the United States like covertly supports Al Qaeda but says that we have a war on terror. So that's why they accepted a couple prisoners, because they were trying to cooperate with the United States to stop the war. So, and how much time do I have? So then basically on Russia, Russia did not hack the DNC emails. They were leaked, and I mean what it does, and the US interferes in elections all over the world, interfered in the Russian election and installed Boris Yeltsin to steal Russia's resources for us in the 90s. So Russia doesn't interfere here. The US interferes there and everywhere, and I wouldn't even care, because everyone in the world should be able to vote for the United States president, because we have bases everywhere in the world and nuclear weapons everywhere in the world. The leader of the US empire is the business of everyone in the world.
Thank you so much. Okay, I do want to take 1 second. We have one candidate who is on the phone who has been waiting with us for a while now. And I would like to just open this up to them if they would like to introduce themselves and give a few minutes about their platform and chime in on anything that they've heard during this conversation. Is that all right? Are you here with us still?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes, can everyone hear that?
Yep.
Look at us. Okay, go ahead, we're ready for you.
Okay, that's great. Hi everyone, I'm Ian Schlackman, and I really appreciate you letting me live stream in today. So wish I could be there in person. I was really enjoying the live stream, but it did cut out. I'd love to just mention that. It's been such a great conversation, so glad to be a part of it. So I'm probably
who is helping us keep time. And so I've given you a little extra just because you're jumping in late, but now that I know that we can hear you so well, we'll just throw you in with rotation. Does that sound okay? All right? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna jump back in. I'm gonna start with Howie, okay, and then we'll pass the mic around. And then we'll come back to you, Ian, when you're ready. And here you go, Howie.
Well, I hope in 2 minutes I can answer 6 or 12 minutes now of criticisms or misstatements about me. I did mistakenly say Bradley Manning instead of Chelsea Manning in an interview. I worked very hard on that case when he or she was Bradley. And, you know, I misspoke and I apologize.
Again?
And I apologize.
And again, and again, and again.
People are dying.
Come on.
Of suicide.
I
Stick to our
apologize.
2 minutes. We'll go to you next, Dario, okay? Go ahead.
I have not prevented anybody who's a candidate from speaking anywhere. I've responded to invitations. I think the concerns they're raising are, I was asked to speak at 2 fundraisers about the Green New Deal. I was the first person in this country to campaign for Green New Deal back in 2010. Been working on it for a decade. And I'm all for it. And in these statements they're talking about, I mean, they were out before I even saw them in one case. I don't know what the second one is. But my position is everybody should have fair access to all the media platforms and all the debates. On greening the dollar, we shouldn't counterpose that to taxing the rich. I helped get that passed into the platform. I've spoken at the American Monetary Institute conferences. This is something I've worked on for a long time. I consider it the modern greenback proposal. And it shouldn't be counterposed to taxing the rich, because that's where the reparations should come from, the people that have gotten ill-gotten gains. The greenbacks, digital or U.S. notes as paper currency that we send out, are our common public resource. We shouldn't be using that for reparations. It should be the ill-gotten gains. And finally, I mean, Syria, come on, man. Half that population is displaced. And to say that everybody that opposes Assad is some kind of jihadi, Wahhabi terrorist is just the kind of Islamophobia that the U.S. has used on this war on terror. You got to talk to people. I had a friend who was a filmmaker who went back to Syria. He was a Christian from Damascus. He was killed by Assad. His name was Bassem al-Shahidi. Look him up in WikiLeaks, Wikipedia, and find out he was no
2 minutes.
jihadi.
2 minutes. I think we're gonna head this way, and then we'll come back.
David?
Okay, well, I wanted to talk about the Green New Deal a little bit. I think the phrase Green New Deal is a really unfortunate way to frame what the Green Party is trying to do, because the phrase New Deal is a Democrat Party phrase that was used to describe what the Franklin Roosevelt administration was doing to try to save capitalism, because at that time in the 30s, the Soviet Union was rising, and there was like a possibility that there would be a communist revolution even here. So they had a Green New Deal to try to have reforms to stop us from having a communist revolution here. And I mean, it didn't even work. They had to go to World War II to save the economy here and keep capitalism going. And we don't want to go to World War III to keep capitalism going. So, and I lost my train of thought.
You can always come back.
All right, well, maybe I'll come back.
If I may.
Please.
All right. So I'm just going to say briefly, there was no counter positioning of greening the dollar against taxing the rich. We ultimately want to use multiple strategies to deal with this issue, but that was the first thing that came out of your mouth. You didn't mention greening the dollar until I mentioned it. And this is a general fault, I will say, that you just happen to be late on a number of issues. Late in regards to addressing transgender rights, late in regards to addressing the wider economic issues in this forum and other places. And you know what? I think we as a party have to uplift each other and bring each other to the place and space where we can march forward together, but as a presidential candidate, you should already be there. Now I'm going to go and talk about the issues. The Green New Deal. I support the Green New Deal. We definitely have to move to 100% renewable energy and not be sidetracked by Democrats' attempts to give us a false version of veneer on top of a corporatist system. But we have to make multiple New Deals. We have to have what I call a People of Color Bill of Rights, a new deal for people who have been given a raw deal in this country for centuries. And it involves access to justice issues, ending police brutality, revamping our justice system, reparations, of course, native sovereignty, respecting that, finally, ending predatory banking and lending practices against people of color, fair immigration practices. We have concentration camps at the border. No one has mentioned this yet. We are engaged in massive human rights abuses on this border. It must end. And the only way we're going to end it is by having a candidate who steps forward and speaks loudly to address the wide swaths of issues that this country's facing in regards to justice. You can't just stop at the Green New Deal. You can't just pick and choose and find the ones that have been comfortable for you. We need to get out of our comfort zone as a country and break down those barriers and those walls that some are putting up to divide us, and our party has the most robust and clear platform to do that.
I'm going to just go over the positioning statement with my 2 minutes. There's a difference there's a contrast between conventional economics and ecological economics. It's really important that the Green Party embrace those differences. The Green New Deal doesn't do a system change, so I know it's important, but unless we deal with the 1 and the 99, it's just a reform. And that goes into $15 an hour, national health care. So it can't just be one thing. So let's look at conventional economics as opposed to ecological economics. The conventional economics is a poorly constructed economic institution. The society faces unacceptable choices between the earth, catastrophe, and human misery. It does not work. Firms and households don't match. Ecological economics is a view of a contextualized within a biosphere of a learning model that transitions a state economy into what's required for us to ensure our planetary boundaries. Not a nice words, but it's just the one plus us. So it's re-looking at how we look at economics from an ecological perspective. The second point I wanted to bring up is making sure we qualify in all 50 ballots on ballot access. Also, benchmarking, running people of color. We're browning, so having a network so that we train ourselves, the current Green Party members, as ambassadors of change. Wow, this 2 minute goes fast. I do want to point out something. Myself, David, and Dennis submitted workshops. One of my workshop was this, the green positioning system. We were all denied, but how we got a workshop? Stand up.
2 workshops.
3, oh, sorry, 3. I didn't know, I forgot maybe. But it's really important that we help each other. So I want a commitment that if we don't get a workshop, you don't get one.
Thank you. Ian, I'd like to open it up. If you have anything that you'd like to say, we're going to extend 2 minutes to you. Are you all set?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead. We're ready when you are.
Okay, did you hear what I said? There's no question, just whatever I'd like to say.
Yeah, if you want to just chime in, any point that you'd like to touch on that you've heard, anything that you'd like to counter, anything like that.
Sure, fantastic. Well, it's, you know, I understand that on stage or trying to have an equal and fair Green Party primary. I want to give a special shout out to, I don't think he's there, but Dennis, and also Siddhanam. We all wrote a reparations demand sheet just a couple weeks ago, and I know Dennis is continuing that effort. And I think that, you know,
Thank you so much. Okay, I do want to stay true to my word and open up the floor to anyone who might have questions. Is there anyone in the audience who has questions that they would like to ask of the candidates? Awesome, thank you. Let's limit the question, let's keep it with the same 2 minutes, okay? So we'll go ahead and we'll throw it out there and allow each candidate 2 minutes. And Ian, I'll make sure to get you in once everyone has gone through, okay?
Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself as well.
Okay. I'm Tyler Fricke. I'm 23. I just graduated college. So this might be a brief answer, but would you support making Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. into statehood and even other territories such as Guam? And would you support dismantling the Electoral College? And if not, why?
Thank you.
It's a great question. I think after this one, if you wouldn't mind coming down if you have a question, I think that would help. Are you okay to start?
Yeah. I support independence for Puerto Rico. I think that's pretty simple. So,
In DC.
yeah, and DC too. And on the Electoral College, I mean, I don't even support the continued existence of the United States. It's an illegitimate white nationalist colony on stolen land here, and it needs to go. The United States. Can I finish answering about the Green New Deal stuff?
Please take your time.
Yeah. So on the Green New Deal, you know, some Green Party members they talk about the Green New Deal, and they do manage to use this framework to talk about radical things. So I'm not like against everybody who supports the Green New Deal, but it's an unfortunate term because it's so easily co-opted by the Democrats because New Deal is their term. Like one of my senators in Massachusetts, Ed Markey, was a warmongering congressman for 30 years. He has this plan. He had this plan when Obama was president. Markey had this plan to build $600 billion of new nuclear weapons, and he called it a cut because Obama wanted to build $1 trillion and got like anti-war organizations to support it. And now he sent me a letter asking me to give him money so he can push the Green New Deal. It's just like too confusing for us to be using this Democrat term, and we'll never get anywhere until we distinguish ourselves from the Democrats by calling for a revolution instead of a New Deal.
Could the questioner please repeat?
Do you support making Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. into statehood, and do you support eliminating the Electoral College, and if not, why?
Puerto Rico, D.C., easy answer. We as a party support that. And the issue of independence of Puerto Rico is a very important issue to me personally, from the many people that I've met with and worked with who are very supportive of Puerto Rico being freed from the shackles of colonization, because that's what we're talking about. Now, this is very current in the news because we're seeing these protests taking place in Puerto Rico. The protests are stimulated by a sense of disconnect with the governance in that island, but that disconnect isn't rooted in just a few messages. It's rooted in centuries of oppression and colonization on that island. Now, some seem to want to take the approach, even in this own party, that we're just going to layer what we want over top of Puerto Rico's list of priorities. We're going to bring the Green New Deal to Puerto Rico and everything's going to be great. No. Puerto Ricans are going to have their own sovereignty and make their own choices for once. D.C. is going to finally come out of being disenfranchised for once. It will be a state. That's what we support as a party. Now, abolishing Electoral College, it's almost kind of an academic question when you face what we're advancing as a platform, which is restructuring the whole electoral system. Abolish all of what we are seeing and facing. All the hurdles being put in place for independence, for third parties, hurdles being put in the way to your choice. We need massive democratic reform. We need proportional representation. We need a system that is going to allow us to have ranked choice. We need the ability for other voices to come to the forefront. And this is happening in some states, but it needs to happen all across this country, along with a clean and fair funding system, a system that's publicly funded so we take corporations out of politics, a system where we're able to have free and open debates, because this party has been squeezed out of so many debate opportunities. We mentioned that earlier in talking about RT. Some people seem to think that was a bad idea, but we need every opportunity we can get, and when we get in office, when the Hunter administration gets into office, we're going to bring about a democratic reform that is going to make sure that all voices come to the forefront. Because as we talked about earlier, Sister Sydenham, this inclusion issue, inclusivity, we're stronger when we all are able to speak together and learn from each other. That's democracy.
Teach.
Yeah, DC statehood, all the territories should be able to determine for themselves their status in relation to the United States. It should be the people's decision in those territories. We should abolish the electoral college and replace it with a national popular vote with instant runoff voting. On the workshops at the annual gathering, I had nothing to do with that. Well,
Excuse me.
yeah, I had nothing to do with that. That was the people organizing the conference. I had no problem with, and I believe they are trying to talk to the people whose workshops were rejected and find a place for you. I think it's wrong to object to me presenting a workshop. I'm doing one with John McGrath and Jill Stein on the Green New Deal. And I was asked to be on another about organizing a mass party because of my labor background. Bruce Dixon, who's no longer with us, put in a proposal that the two of us were going to do, reprising the presentation we made in Houston about having a mass membership party with, you know, a dues-paying membership, a real party. That was not approved. So I'm not the one you should talk to with that problem. As far as the Green New Deal goes, I've been calling for an eco-socialist Green New Deal. So it's not reforming capitalism, it's changing the system. The pieces of the Green New Deal are transitional demands that mobilize people because they make sense in their own terms. And then the people come up against the system and they realize we've got to change the system. And it's socialist. We need a public energy system. The Koch brothers and Exxon are not going to reinvest their earnings in renewables. They're going to expand fossil fuel extraction, which is going to kill us all. So we got to take them over. Like during World War II, a quarter of all manufacturing was either taken over by the federal government or they built it. And that enabled us to turn industry on a dime to help defeat the fascists in Europe and Tojo in Japan. And we got to do the same kind of thing to deplete climate change. But the difference is, instead of handing those factories back to the super rich and their big corporations after World War II, we're going to turn over to the workers as worker co-ops so that the income is distributed fairly in the first place.
Yes, for statehood. Yes, for freedom. The Electoral College was based on folks like me and Dario, being 3/5 of a human being. So our party, one of the reasons I joined is because reparations and against the Electoral College. So yes. My brother, what I asked you was to go a step off. If we're not allowed, join us. That's it. I don't think that's too much to ask another presidential candidate, especially one who has been allowed to go to state parties and us been disallowed. That's provable. We have the evidence there. We have 2 statements, 6 people. I'm not gonna lie about that. We all have the emails back and forth. So I think it's just disingenuous of you to say that. Second thing, as Greens, we have to love diversity. It's a part of who we are. Ecological wisdom comes from folks with a history of understanding the earth before, you know, folk in America got it. So it's really important that we live our values. Ian.
All right, Ian. Are you good to answer?
Sure. I think, was the question on Puerto Rico? Was that the question?
Yes,
DC.
and Washington, D.C.
Sure, yeah, okay, yeah. Well, I mean, the way I feel about it is, I personally want both of those areas to have voting rights immediately. It's absolutely shameful that they don't. But I think, like another candidate mentioned, you know, it really should be up to the people of Puerto Rico whether or not they even want to remain part of the U.S. I think that's another very important distinction, and they should have the right to choose
I would like to open it up if there's another question in the audience. Do we have another brave soul? Yes. Okay.
I'm Bray Shy.
Oh, right.
Actually, and this is actually in reference to kind of the Sydenham had opened up the point earlier. And within the Green Party on a national level and on very many state levels and very many local levels, there is, to quote William Shakespeare, there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. And it's been going on for, I mean, it's happened in 2004 with the native sport being disenfranchised, happened again in 2008 with other native sports being disenfranchised. It's been going on for a very, very long time, and I don't even know the answer to this. But I want to hear you guys as leaders, and I want to have any of those National Green Party members who are listening right now, and each locally even ask the same question. There seems to be this problem of suppressing voices within the Green Party. If you don't like what the people are saying, you don't like what the positions they're saying, you silence them. And it's been going on for a very, very, very long time. We have lost a lot of good members from our party because of this. On the national level, on the state level, on the local level. So I want to hear you guys talk about, and I love what you have to say about, if you're not included, nobody gets to go. I love that. To open up actual debate and discussion so we can actually have an open, democratic, and willing to listen to each other Green Party, because we don't have that, we haven't had that for a very, very long time. I'd love to hear each of you candidates speak on what you're gonna do as an individual to help lead that motion for opening up democracy within the Green Party.
Great. Ian, are you okay to start answering this time around?
Absolutely, absolutely. Sure, I got most of that, but I think I know what the gentleman's asking. So, sir, thank you so much for asking this question and for bringing this up. You are 100% right. There have been some very nasty anti-democratic surprises since I've started running for president with the Green Party, and it's opened up a lot of skeletons in the closet, let's just say. I've taken the initiative to put some of that out on public display. It definitely got me some negative feedback, but I don't care. I don't work with the Democratic Party. I'm not here to smile and play nice. I'm here to make sure that people understand the crises our world are facing, and that we set the example as the premier political party about how to run a fair, credible campaign. That is one of the reasons I'm running. It's one of the reasons I will continue to run, and I won't stop. We absolutely cannot have internal mechanisms where we're silencing other candidates. Like I've said before, the diversity in the party is our strength. We need to be able to hear every single idea, and we will not be a credible party if we have, fighters like Jill Stein fighting for voting rights, and then meanwhile inside our own party, we're silencing voices, we're cutting people out, we're kicking people out of the discussion. That's not right. It's completely wrong. And we need to be a unified front, and I feel almost everyone on this stage, well, I'll just say it because everyone else is saying it, except for Mr. Hawkins, is part of that unified front. And I've talked to his team personally. I told him that he needs to start getting on the page with us, because this is a fight for credibility. We need to be that premier example party. People need to see us doing the things that we want to be done nationally in terms of having free and fair elections. And so that's the fight that we're in right now. And I really feel strongly that if we don't get this right internally, who's going to get it right? The Libertarian Party? The Democratic Party? I don't think so. I mean, this is a fight to be an example for our entire nation. So I do thank the gentleman for raising that question. It's very important.
Time, thank you. I'll start here and we'll just pass it on down. Thank you.
Leadership is key. As soon as anyone says they're running for president, I call them, encourage them, try to pull them in. Let's move forward. I have been the pushy presidential candidate to get everybody on point. Text, call, email, let's make it happen. I'm one of 26, number 16 at the bottom, so I know how to get along. And we do need a candidate that represents unity. This GPS 2020 that I will email everybody, it came about because 600 Greens, our core team pulled 7 points together. We sent it out, we pulled it back. We came up with 24 points we believe we Greens can agree on as a strategy to move forward. Brother David had us to refocus. and make the 10 key values and the 4 pillars first and foremost. We have to recommit, and as a candidate, I'm willing to make that commitment. And if someone is not allowed anywhere I am, I won't do it. That's leadership. I don't care who made the decision. I will not participate unless everyone is allowed. Full stop. Rosa Parks, this one.
Well, you went back to, Ralph Nader's issues in 2004. 2008, he decided not to go because he didn't want to compete with Cynthia McKinney. He said, let's not fight amongst ourselves, let's have 2 voices out there. So he took the independent route. But I think the problem in the Green Party is we're represented virtually not real members electing their representatives. We're structured like the capitalist parties from the top down. If you look at the spreadsheet that set up representation on the National Committee, it's 40 columns wide, 35 indicators, 5 columns of math, and nobody understands what it means. And then the people that are supposedly represented don't even know who's representing them. We got to do like a union structure, like a community organization. 1 vote, 1 member, you pay your dues, you agree to the principles, you're a member. And then you represent those members proportionally from the districts. And that way you can have real accountability. And we won't have all these games going on. Now, what I'm hearing here is that I'm accused of excluding people, and I have not. But I'm being asked to exclude myself because some other people feel they didn't get, well, they think they were excluded. It wasn't me excluding. Now, I'm the only one being asked to exclude himself. I think there's an inconsistency there.
Excuse me, I gotta make a point.
Let's continue on with the 2 minutes. And we have about 20 more minutes. So let's go through one more time, and then we can come around again if everyone is in agreement.
This is a textbook white privilege response. And when you
Bam.
point out somebody's exclusion, they say, how dare you victimize me? How dare you? It's textbook white privilege. And I'm disappointed to see that from someone who should be a leader in the Green Party. It is white fragility. And here's what really happened. I appeared in Chicago to speak at the Illinois State Green Convention, even though I was told by email I was not allowed to speak. Howie Hawkins was being given a keynote speech at that convention, and I would not be allowed to speak. Now, I am loud, proud, black, and gay, and from New Jersey, so you know you can't stop me. So I showed up, and as soon as the convention took a break for lunch, I said, everybody, come in the next room. We're going to have a candidate Q&A. And they went, and no one did stop me. But you know what? Later that evening, Howie showed up for his fundraiser due that people had to pay for tickets to. And we talked, and we smiled, and we took pictures. He said nothing about the fact that he was going to go up to the dais and speak, and I was not being asked to. Now, to contrast that, when we appeared in Pennsylvania, Ian Schlakman, who I have a very good relationship with, I have a very good relationship overall with the people I'm running with. We had this great collegiality. He was on a panel at one point in Pennsylvania, and he said, we came down from the dais. He said, have you been asked to speak? Brother, have you been asked to speak? Those are green values. And I can see that in another candidate and say, that's wonderful, and applaud them for that, because that's the kind of collegiality we need to have, and that's how we need to move forward in 2020. So we need to lift everyone up. That's how we're going to solve this problem. We need to recognize that green is the color of growth, and we need to bring people in to this party by recognizing their diverse points of view and respecting them. We need to stop all the nonsense happening in national leadership where there's turf wars, some of which are aligned, unfortunately, with the Hawkins campaign. You have a co-chair who is on his campaign against every standard of ethics in regards to conflicts of interest, but he seems to be okay with that too. We need to end the abusive behavior taking place. Greens against greens. A disagreement over values should be a point of growth, not a way to separate people from a party that is inclusive for everybody.
Okay, well, I've been in the Green Party since 2003, and I've seen this problem all along of people being excluded and of people like scheming for their faction and to exclude other people from committees and stuff. And in 2006, I was the secretary of my state party, and at that time, Jill Stein, who is from Massachusetts, she wasn't doing anti-war stuff. She was running for Secretary of State or governor, that kind of stuff, like just stuff that she thought had nothing to do with international politics. So I was doing anti-war protests, and one of our chairs of the state party was doing anti-war protests against the Israeli attack on Lebanon, and Jill brought a bunch of liberals to the convention and removed me as secretary and removed this other person as the chair. But I'm still supported Jill for president last time because now she is doing anti-war stuff. But anyway, I'm familiar with these kinds of problems, and there has been a problem with Howie being invited to all the state conventions and stuff. In Massachusetts, Howie was invited to come speak on the Green New Deal at my state convention, and I raised this at a state committee meeting a month before the state convention, and they said, okay, we'll invite all the other candidates, but we won't let them speak. So that's what they did. So, I'd like to see us stop having scheming and factions. Sometimes the factions don't even have different politics, but they still scheme against each other. I'd like to see us try to have a different culture where we work on consensus and we don't replicate all the dysfunction of white nationalist U.S. culture, So.
Thank you, Pam.
Okay, that was great.
Excuse me,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a point.
1 second. I just want to temperature check with the room. If you think of any other questions, please think of them. And we'll go through one more time. We'll have one more question. Does that sound okay? Okay.
It's really important to talk about intrinsic bias. Are folks familiar with intrinsic bias? This is what we're experiencing right now. We all have it. It just amplifies with Europeans. With us, it seems like that. Here's another thing, sexism. I was honored to be the campaign manager for Cynthia McKinney. She won. Ralph didn't let her do nothing. She ran and won. That concept of he stepped off because he didn't want to fight is untrue. Every place we went in 2008, if Ralph Nader didn't show up, you did. He participated. He didn't win. So that kind of mentality, nobody gave her anything. I was there. I was proud to be her campaign manager, and we won. Nobody didn't stop. You showed up to get in just like everybody else. So that mentality has to change, and it's critically important that we have people who are sensitive to intrinsic bias, who understand sexism, who understand gender fluidity, and not have to keep correcting themselves. Oh, I'll come back.
Well, Illinois Green Party event, I didn't know they told Dario he couldn't speak. I mean, when I got there, he was there. I got there in the afternoon. I was asked to speak in the evening at a fundraiser for them on the Green New Deal, which I had agreed to. So, same thing with Massachusetts. This is the first I've heard they had some discussion on their state committee. I was asked to speak. I showed up. I did the best I could. I did support Ralph Nader. I told him before Cynthia ever called me that I was supporting him. I told Cynthia if she wanted to run, I would help her get on the ballot in New York. I got her more signatures than anybody else in New York, but I did support Ralph. Ralph did not seek the Green Party nomination. Just for the record, he ran his own independent campaign. So
why were you showing up everywhere representing him when we went out campaigning? That's contradictory.
Well, I showed up representing his independent campaign, not
For
a
Greens.
No, not a Green nomination campaign. He didn't do one.
Are we going back around?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
All right. If you're going to be the presidential candidate for the Green Party, your job is to see people, everyone on the margins. When you see somebody who's not up on that dais with you, you are supposed to lift them up. So you can't say, I didn't know. You saw that you were getting a privileged position and nobody else was, and you were okay with that. That's not green. Now, we're talking about party growth here, folks. When we talk about party growth, and my colleague Ian mentioned this earlier, we got to bring in all the different people who've been disenfranchised by this corporate party system. And we have to do that by emphasizing green values. And I have experience with this because I'm the only person who is running in this race who holds elected office. I'm the only elected green office holder in the state of Ohio. We won a long shot write-in campaign to get elected to the Youngstown Board of Education, where I have fought the powers that have attempted to take over our school district, or have taken over our school district, and have monetized the suffering of our children languishing in a failing school district. I have fought them tooth and nail. I have fought them in court. I have experience doing that, and I have experience bringing people together to advocate on the causes that matter. And that's what we need in 2020. We need somebody who's going to talk to people about the issues that matter to them. Workers who are being underpaid, people who have children in the school system who don't have even textbooks to take home. They want to know how you're going to solve their problems. And the way you're going to solve them is, to start with, by seeing them.
I also want to talk about disability issues a little bit. I work on disability issues. One of the things I work on is opposing euthanasia and assisted suicide, because it's being used to encourage people with disabilities to tell them their lives aren't worth living and to kill them. There are people in states that have legalized assisted suicide who are getting letters from their insurance companies: we won't pay for your treatment for your cancer that your doctor ordered, but we would pay for the assisted suicide. So I work on that and other disability issues. And one part of my campaign is, I have a lot of anxiety, and I haven't done a lot of public speaking before. I feel a little uncomfortable with public speaking, and I was inspired by David Cobb in 2004. Even though I supported Nader, I grew to like David Cobb. And one time, David Cobb, who was our presidential candidate in 2004, was interviewed, and somebody asked him about his experience. What experience does he have to be able to be president? And he said he thinks anybody can be president, that you don't have to have special experience. I mean, look at the people we have, the psychopaths we have as president. So I agree with that, and so I want to, inspire other people who aren't used to being in the spotlight, or don't see themselves as functioning really well, to take leadership roles in the Green Party too.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'd like to open it up for 2 more minutes for you.
Sure, yeah. I want to pick up on something that Dario said. I think that the Green Party is new to a lot of people, and to some people who've actually been out there a while, and in particular, I'll just say that people of color, especially in Black communities, I've encountered a ton of skepticism about the Green Party. And I feel that we have a special obligation to make sure that we're holding fair and accountable races internally in the Green Party. I was the campaign manager for my good friend Reverend Annie Chambers in Baltimore, former Black Panther, former National Welfare Rights Union organizer. And we ran a campaign for her to run for Tenant Council president, and she won. And now she's also on the RAP board too. She won that election as well. So it's really important. And then once she won that position, then when she's on the RAP board, the only one in the room, the only Green in the room full of Democrats actually fighting against rent increases, utility hikes, fighting against Ben Carson trying to impose a rule that would kick out people who were just seeing a tiny bit of smoke in their apartment, if they were smokers. Once she's on those boards and advocating, then we've got new people turning around and saying, oh, the Green Party's where it's at. The Green Party's where we need to take the public housing community in Baltimore City. And then we have another Green on the RAP board. His name is Anthony Williams, which I announced with the last Maryland debate. So we are growing in Maryland, and it's because we are step by step making sure that there is trust between communities of color and African American communities, where there just hasn't been, where there simply hasn't been for decades. And it takes taking that first step. It takes me picking up the phone and saying, hey, they're running a rigged election against Annie Chambers. We need lawyers down here. We need people to watch the polls. We need people to go down to City Hall and protest. I mean, they literally turn people away trying to vote for her, saying, oh, you know what, the election is just between 9 and 4. 9 and 4. Okay.
Thank you. All right, we've got 1 question left. Sarah? Oh,
2.
2 questions. Okay. let's do 2 questions. We'll do 1 round, 1 minute answer, please, okay? And let's be respectful of time so we can still manage to get out of here when we need to, okay?
Thank you, Danielle, and thank you all for your answers. It's been really enlightening so far. So I'm, just real quick, I'm a believer that we can't move forward as a country until we address our past. And we have some really outrageous atrocities to address. I don't like using the word how our country was founded, but how our current, I think you called it a colony, is in existence. And I really like that. So I am here tonight because I work with Traeger locally on supporting reparations and working to bring that to St. Paul, Minneapolis. But my question is something that that I'm a little personally unclear on, and I'm looking for your brilliant take on this, which is reparations, I believe, are for descendants of enslaved Africans. And I personally exclusively use the word reparations with regards to that conversation. Something I am less clear on is, do you believe it's possible to make amends to continue to stay on this land as European people? I think it's a different conversation for people who were brought here against their will and the descendants of those people. Do you think it's possible to make amends? And number 2, as part of that question, what specifically do you support as far as what making amends, if that's even possible, at the direction of Indigenous people here? If they say it's possible, which actions do you support?
Sarah not making the 1 minute answer any easier for y'all. That's a loaded question. Let's start at this end.
Well, yeah, I agree with you on the use of the word reparations to refer to Africans. I don't think it's the reparations are only for the period of enslavement. The reparations are for the kidnapping from Africa and the destruction of whole nations in Africa, and for the oppression that's continued till this day, and we still have slavery to this day. I mean, the 13th Amendment kept it for prisoners. There are Africans in Louisiana who are still picking cotton on prisons and not getting paid, and prison farms, And what was the other question?
Amends.
Oh, the amends. Yeah. I think if the indigenous people should have sovereignty over this land, and if they want to tell me I have to go back to Europe and the other people go back to Europe, then we have to go.
Yes, I believe in reparations for the atrocities against the descendants of enslaved Africans. I think it's very clear-cut to understand who we're talking about and what process needs to be engaged in. They knew how to find us when it came time to subject us to racist violence. They knew how to find Emmett Till. You know how to find us to make it right. Now, when it comes to continuing to stay on this land that has been stolen from Native peoples, what has to happen is a reparative process with those peoples, one that involves consent and equality. And that equality has to be an equality that's also economic. We have to uplift each other and live on a land in which we all have free agency and respect for the cultures that bring to bear the great diversity of this land. Now, when we talk about those amends, it's going to include land, but it's also going to include economic solutions and political and community empowerment. This is key, because you can't just dump a check or a certain benefit on a community and say, here you go. Making whole is a reparative process, and that is a process that involves community empowerment.
The question is, can we remain on the land with its indigenous inhabitants? And I know from working with them that yes, we can if we have the proper relationship, if we respect the treaty rights. I'm from upstate New York. The Haudenosaunee, or the Iroquois Confederacy, welcomes other people if we have a proper relationship. The Onondagas, which are adjacent to Syracuse, they want the right to basically have a veto over environmental concerns and land use, and that for them would be good. You talk to Winona LaDuke up at the White Earth Reservation, she'll have a position for the Ojibwe. Anna Rondon, Navajo or Diné, who's a Green, been since the 80s, she has another position, and I think, you know, I know her, she occupied Alcatraz with Richard Oakes, who came from Syracuse, and that led to the American Indian Movement. And what I'm saying is all the different nations of Indians have different ideas about how to do that. So all of them have to be respected, and all of their treaties have to be respected, and that's a starting place.
Great question. Ghana, West Africa, started this year the 400 year of the return. So if our homeland can welcome us, other folks' homeland can welcome them too. There's been a process. What happens all over the world? Where your DNA, you can find it. So it's not that difficult. So definitely the amends. I believe it's really important, as I highlighted about the doctrine of discovery, all this is about truth and reconciliation. When folks really understand, not the textbook crazy, that we really accept who we are, how we got here, who they are, how they got here, and we move forward. I believe that honesty, truth, the green values we hold and we should have will allow us to heal. Humanity has been through much more, and we can get to a place where we can love each other, care, and move forward. I believe we can make amends. My grandfather was killed by a Klansman. I don't dislike Europeans because of that. I understand what happened.
All right, Ian, we're down to just 1 minute. So if you would like to go ahead and give your input. You still with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, okay, go ahead.
Okay, fantastic. Great. It's a fantastic question. It's absolutely true. I believe I've heard this said. It's a little hard to hear. My apologies. Slave owners were compensated, were given reparations when slaves were freed. So I mean, when I hear candidates talk about the fact that we can't do reparations, which is almost everyone in the Democratic Party, it's wildly offensive. It's very, very offensive. There are historically many examples of reparations around the world. There's West Germany to Israel, and my own community in the U.S. Jewish individuals have reparations in some form or another. So I think it's entirely possible to have that dialogue and to start the concept, to start what that would actually look like. I really do. I think it's going to take a lot of political will. So I think it would take electing the Green to office for this conversation to actually be rooted and started and to grow. And I don't think you're going to see any Democrat actually push this agenda.
Thank you. Okay, last question here. Lightning round, okay? Here we go. Diane?
Loaded lightning round.
Diane Peterson from the 4th CD Greens, which is the East Metro here in the Twin Cities. If you are elected to be the Green Party presidential candidate, who would you pick? And if you don't have someone in your mind, or even if you do, what are your criteria for picking a running mate?
All right, Ian, we'll start with you.
Well, I've asked her many times, but Mike, campaign manager, Reverend Annie Chambers, former Black Panther, who actually went to sharecroppers in Eastern Maryland and actually liberated them and got them out of that terrible situation and brought them into Baltimore where they could get decent service because they were just living in huts basically back in the 60s. Initially walked with Martin Luther King in the original Poor People's Campaign, and I was so proud to walk with her again in the new Poor People's Campaign right alongside Reverend Jesse Jackson and Reverend Barber and Reverend Liz. So I mean, that's only the kind of person I'm looking for, someone that compliments me, definitely open to ideas.
Okay. Thank you.
A green, someone who's been a green at least 5 years, that we don't pull in from somewhere else. A person of color. Again, by the end of this century, it's going to be brown, so preferably a brown person. Someone who wants to be trained to lead. Back in 2008, I ran as vice president. It gave me so much insight so that I could be a presidential candidate. Someone who's been a campaign manager, someone who's a strategist, someone who goes along with these 24 points Green says. Green Party folks have said we need to move ourselves forward. Is it stop or 30? I always get confused.
That was 30.
I'm sorry.
Just very efficient.
When you raise your hand, I stop. Sorry about that.
Well, if I'm the nominee, I'll be looking for a woman of color who is down with our program for eco-socialism, and especially party building, because that's what we gotta do in this election cycle, because it's all gonna be about Trump. We're gonna have a hard time getting anywhere in edgewise. We gotta get ready for after 2020, and that's party building.
I'm going to be looking for someone who represents green values, which are the values that are going to move this country forward with equality. Someone who wants to break this corrupt system and has already started to in their local community. Someone who has different perspectives from mine and can bring those perspectives to the ticket in a way that's going to make the ticket more inclusive. And I definitely want to include in that gender diversity. I would like to have a running mate who is female or non-binary, and that would bring a different perspective to my campaign. But not just from being a part of that identity, but hopefully someone who is actively engaged in activism in regards to women's rights and gender diversity.
I don't really have an answer to this. I think it's way too early to think about this. I'm still trying to get more people to join and run for the nomination. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe one of us is the right candidate, but maybe we still need somebody else to step forward. I was disappointed when Reverend Pinckney dropped out. I thought he would have been a really good candidate. So I'm still looking for more people to join. And somebody who is in prison could even run for president or vice president. I think that would be an interesting thing to do.
Okay. Thank you all so much. I do want to allow just a quick moment, maybe 30 seconds or so, for a closing statement. I would like to thank you all for your time and your input and energy. And also, I would like to invite Councilmember Cam Gordon to come down and close us out. So we'll go through very quickly, and then we'll have our last closeout from Councilmember Gordon. So go ahead, Ian, you can kick us off. Take about 30 seconds or so and just give us a closing statement, please.
Sure, yeah. Thank you so much for letting me represent it today. I very much appreciate it. For those that want to learn more about my campaign, please head over to schlakman.com, SCHLAKMAN.com. I'm also very active on Twitter. I respond very quickly there if you want to get in touch with the campaign, see what we're about. We just did some fantastic interviews that are up as well. And, my campaign is really about moving the entire economy into a new human rights-based centered economy, but also focusing on the Green Party and down-ticket candidates, because we could grow. We could have a Green in Congress in the next 4 years if we just focus on down-ticket candidates now. And that's what this campaign is about for me personally. So thank you again. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Leadership. 2020 has to be about leadership. We have 24 points on the green positioning system that will ensure everything we all talked about happens. You need someone mature, someone who's a farmer, someone who's female, and a person of color. I also happen to be disabled, so I believe our campaign speaks to those issues for folks who we can grow the Green Party with.
More than anything, as I mentioned earlier, my campaign is about party building. Our goal is to help all 51 states and DC get on the ballot this time, first for the Greens. We're going to try to qualify for the matching funds early so that January 1st next year we're getting that. And then we're going to put that money into organizers. Greens are good activists. We show up, but we don't have the skills that a union organizer or community organizer has to expand beyond the usual circles and build the base. The future of the Green Party is the working class, the youth, and the people of color, because they vote less than other people because they think nobody's representing them. And those are the people we got to organize into the Green Party. And we're going to try to put some resources into helping us become better organizers.
Like all too many similar stories, a man named Eric Garner encountered law enforcement, and as someone who is used to using his hands to bring new life into this world as a horticulturalist, plants that helped us breathe better, his life ended on the streets exclaiming, "I can't breathe. We are all Eric Garner. We are being choked by a system in which we cannot breathe physically from the pollution, but also spiritually, because we have all been deprived of our rights. And while it is great to talk about green jobs, and I support the Green New Deal, there are no green jobs for Eric Garner. He is no longer with us. He will not be planting more plants that will bring new air and energy into this world. We have to meet people where they are. We have to build those bridges, and we have to break down those barriers. We have to plant the seeds of justice and equality, just as he planted so many seeds himself. That is the legacy we leave behind as human beings, not just as Greens. And that is what we are going to do together. Party building is speaking for the voiceless. And that's what my campaign will do.
I think the role of the Green Party presidential candidate should be to call out all the bullshit and to take the correct radical positions based on our values on everything, and not like try to take compromised positions on the basis that like people aren't ready to hear that or that kind of thing. And we need to talk about every issue. I mean, 9/11 truth, that's one of the things I'm going to talk about in my campaign. And there are different ways to build the party. And what I've seen is like the radical people leaving the Green Party and disaffected Democrats joining. And I think there's like a massive base of oppressed people and marginalized people and radical people who don't vote at all. I never registered to vote until I joined the Green Party, you know, and I think the presidential candidate should try to appeal to those people to get them to take us seriously and join the party, and then our down ticket candidates can like really run on talking about the pertinent issues in for their city council or state rep races or whatever.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. I'm just going to say hashtag call out the bullshit. I really like that. Thank you all so much.
Paint the White House green. Won't you help me to
Paint
the White House green?
All right. Well, I just feel so lucky and so fortunate to be here, and I think that we all are so lucky and fortunate to have you come here and help us get jump-started in this year-plus journey of presidential race and making a difference. I happen to serve on the Minneapolis City Council as a Green elected official, and I spend most of my time at the local level grappling with issues. I'm in the belly of the beast. We don't have any other Greens on the council, and so it's a fight and it's a struggle. And a lot of us, I think, do a lot on the local level, and we're trying to make a difference. And it's really important that we acknowledge each other, that we stick together. We need each other. Yes. We need each other for these local races, even when we're mad at each other, even when the differences are glaring, and we still need each other. We need to rely on each other and have each other's backs. And we need to work together on the local level also as in the national races and the presidential campaign. It poses an amazing opportunity for us to organize at the local level and to make a difference. And we are counting on a presidential candidate who will inspire people with respect and with hope for the future and will represent the Green values well. And I was really impressed with the passion that all of you brought today, and the energy and the vision, and you really connecting always to our values and our platform, I think, is really extraordinary. So let's make the commitment that as we go forward and we lose touch, we reconnect, we stay together, and we recognize that as you are off in your worlds, working so hard to try to make a difference on this national scene around here, every good thing you do will ripple down and make impact on us, and we'll be down here working really hard in Minnesota to make sure that the Greens have the best presidential campaign ever as we're moving forward to make sure we have that just, that peaceful, and that democratic world that we all want for the future. Thank you so much. Thank you
all so much. Have a great evening. That's the end of it. Thanks so much.
Can we do a group picture?
Yeah, we'll do a group picture maybe. I don't know the words to the song. Maybe that's something that that I can learn really quick.
Paint, White House, and who? Green.
That's it?
Paint the White House green. Won't you help me to paint the White House green?
We're gonna help you too.
Paint the White House green. All right. Y'all got a song.
We almost had it. All right.
Oh, no.
Do we want to do a photo?
the sign, if we can all come down real quick.
Everybody
Come down. Squeeze in. Squeeze in. Move, walk to the side. Hey, man. Oh, yeah. Hey, you. Come on. Oh, you trust Now, where's this 30-second stop system? Hello. You want to get in the front? You're scaring me with that stop and hurry. You see, I'm the shortest one. I don't know what to stop. Okay, do we squeeze in? Tell us what to do.
You're all in it.
No, these two people weren't in. Come on, please. If I stand up, I'll block everybody, so I'll have to stay seated. Whoa, come on in. Can we do a funky one and then a good one? No.
All right, let's start with just a normal one.
Okay.
Everybody looks
Do it
normal.
in 3 so I can put my smile.
Okay, everybody look really normal. Good job. And now
Oh,
show
no,
me.
she turned.
Oh, you move. Okay.
Who's that up there? Are you
Carol.
coming down? No, you have to come down.
Everybody's included.
Yeah, this is an inclusive picture.
And who's our photographer?
Can you do a selfie? Can you turn around and do a selfie?
I can set the timer on the chair.
Do it.
Yeah. Let me do this first.
Do it. Come on, Carol. Here's a spot in here.
Yes. Thank you, Emma.
Can I go?
Thank you.
Oh, come on, come here, come. Neil just come a little bit.
All right, ready, everybody?
Green.
Okay. And now I want to see your face if the Green Party candidate becomes president of the United States. Show me. Yeah, thank you.
Where's the selfie and the timer? Get you in here, sister.
Last one. I call this the auntie round, where you have to stop and take pictures for
Yeah.
the auntie picture.
Yeah.
All right. If I put this here,
So,
and I put this
So
under
have you all
here.
started already, like, have been going for a while when I came?
Not terribly.
so you're gonna run here? Yeah. Okay.
Come on,
Hey.
Hey, are you in?
Is it gonna click? One. There it is.
There it is.
All right.
Hey everybody. This was the Green Party presidential debate in St. Paul, Minnesota. We had 4 candidates here and 1 called in. Thank you for watching. Please share this too. Bye.